Washington, D.C., September 2024. 2 months before the most turbulent presidential election in modern U.S. history, the morning headlines were ablaze with an incendiary leak. CBS airs explosive Harris interview. Trump calls it sabotage. The interview aired late on a Sunday night, a primetime CBS 60 Minutes special featuring Vice President Kamala Harris, who had just emerged as the unexpected Democratic frontrunner after President Biden formally announced he would not seek re-election. The sit-down was promoted as a straightforward policy discussion. But what viewers got was a shockwave of personal attacks, edited implications, and what Donald Trump later called one of the greatest distortions in television history. The segment showed Harris laughing when asked about Trump's potential return to the White House. "The American people know what's real," she said. Then came a montage, scenes from January 6th, snippets of Trump's speeches on immigration spliced between tearful testimonies from migrant children. The implication was clear, but subtle enough to avoid direct legal defamation. It was suggestive, manipulative, and perfectly timed. By Monday morning, Trump's campaign was in chaos. Every outlet from CNN to TikTok replayed the clips. Social media exploded with memes painting Trump as a threat to the republic. Within 48 hours, his poll numbers dropped 7 points nationally. But Donald J. Trump wasn't a man to suffer losses in silence. At 3:17 a.m. Tuesday morning, he tweeted, "CBS just committed election interference. I will see them in court. $20 billion coming. It's war. Trump Tower, Manhattan, emergency war room." The penthouse lights never went off that week. Stephen Bannon was flown in. So was Rudy Giuliani, now returned from a self-imposed exile in Palm Beach. Eric and Don Jr. stood on either side of their father, who sat behind a massive mahogany desk glaring at a paused clip from the Harris interview. Every frame was frozen mid-expression, like evidence in a courtroom. Trump jabbed a finger at the screen. "That smirk. Look at it. She knows what she's doing. That wasn't an answer. That was a setup. They edited it. Cropped out my rebuttal to Lester Holt last week. I saw the raw footage. This is warfare." Giuliani cleared his throat, running a hand through his thinning hair. "You want to sue CBS for $20 billion. That's unprecedented. Not even Nixon tried that during Watergate." Trump turned slowly. "Nixon didn't own the media cycle like I do." Don Jr. leaned forward. "We'll need more than an ordinary legal team. We need disruption. We need spectacle. Find me Levin. Get Dershowitz on standby. And I want someone fresh, someone they won't see coming." Enter Reagan Lockwood. Reagan Lockwood was a former federal prosecutor turned renegade litigator, famous for her merciless cross-examinations and icy delivery in court. She'd once bankrupted a pharmaceutical giant in a class-action suit and was fired from her D.C. law firm for tweeting, "The Constitution is not optional." She was at a gun range in Virginia when she got the call. Trump's assistant, Katrina Pearson, offered her $5 million just to consider a one-week consultation. Lockwood responded with a single sentence. "If we win, I want my own show on Fox." Deal. By Thursday, Lockwood was walking into Trump Tower in a black suit with a crimson pocket square, no briefcase, just a memory. She'd watched the Harris interview 15 times. She'd read every CBS press statement. And she'd made one startling discovery. The interview had been altered, not once, but 3 times, after its initial upload to CBS's online streaming platform. "We're not suing over a smear," she told the team. "We're suing over election tampering. If we do this right, CBS will be forced to disclose every editorial decision, every timestamp, every cut, every producer's note." CBS headquarters, New York. Les Moonves was long gone, but the culture of control remained. Inside Studio 5A, the 60 Minutes staff huddled around the executive table. Bill Owens, the program's veteran producer, stared at the legal notice in disbelief. $20 billion. "This isn't a lawsuit," he said. "This is a declaration of war." The legal team warned that CBS could be forced to turn over terabytes of internal documents. The edits to the Harris interview had been made hastily after a late-night call with its senior White House liaison, whose name remained off the books, if that came out. An intern was dispatched to delete several Slack messages. One of them read, "Cut that part where she hesitates. Makes her sound unsure. Tighten it. Make it hit." Owens knew it was already too late. Public outrage and media frenzy. By Friday, the story was everywhere. Fox News ran a banner. "Trump sues media giant, defends democracy." CNN called it a political circus, but ratings soared every time they covered it. At a rally in Milwaukee, Trump took the stage before 30,000 screaming fans. They thought they could cancel me, but were suing their pants off. The truth will come out. CBS thinks they're clever, but we're going to expose the whole damn system. The crowd roared. In the shadows, a whistleblower emerges. But the most unexpected twist came not from Trump's camp, but from within CBS. A burner email account, sent to multiple media outlets, included one chilling message. I was in the editing room. I saw what they removed. I have the files. If I disappear, check the backup server titled Project Signifier. Attached was a redacted transcript of the original Harris interview, uncut. In it, Harris had actually paused and said, "I think President Trump's policies on immigration have merit, even if I don't agree with his methods." That line had been deleted. Washington, D.C., October 2024. For a moment, America held its breath. The leak from inside CBS was more than a smoking gun. It was a detonator wired directly into the credibility of a national institution. The redacted transcript showed clear editorial interference, but what shocked the country more was the subtlety. Kamala Harris hadn't just been misrepresented, she'd been algorithmically recast. And someone on the inside had the proof. Project Signifier. The term quickly went viral. Reporters from The Washington Post, Reuters, and even InfoWars began digging. Independent digital sleuths uncovered a private CBS server repository nicknamed Signifier, a sandbox server used by post-production editors for sensitive material. Within days, cyberforensic analysts hired by Trump's team confirmed that Signifier contained over a dozen unreleased edits of the Harris interview, with internal metadata showing timestamps, IP addresses, and editor comments. But there was one problem. The server had been wiped clean. The whistleblower reveals herself. 3 days later, under heavy security and a nationwide media blackout, Jenna Ryland, a 28-year-old CBS video editor based in New York, stepped forward. She didn't go to the press. She didn't go to the FBI. She went to Reagan Lockwood. Ryland had seen her career collapse in slow motion. After voicing concerns about the Harris edit, she was moved to menial projects. A month later, she found a final warning letter in her locker: poor collaboration practices. She recorded every conversation from then on. She gave Lockwood a thumb drive containing 6 audio recordings from editorial meetings, 3 uncut versions of the Harris interview, a Slack archive showing senior producers discussing election optics, a video clip showing a White House liaison, identity blurred, entering the CBS building the night before the edit was finalized. Ryland said only one thing: "I'm not protecting Trump. I'm protecting journalism." Legal earthquake. Reagan Lockwood dropped the evidence in a 94-page filing to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. The motion claimed intentional defamation by omission, conspiracy to interfere with a federal election, coordinated suppression of journalistic integrity. The $20 billion lawsuit now included a supplemental motion for emergency injunctive relief to halt further broadcasts by CBS related to the 2024 election. The courtroom erupted. Federal Judge Amanda Pritchard ordered an emergency evidentiary hearing within 48 hours. CBS legal scrambled. Inside the CBS war room, Bill Owens, the embattled executive producer of 60 Minutes, now faced calls for his resignation. Behind closed doors, boardroom panic reigned. The discovery of Jenna Ryland's archive stunned even the most hardened network executives. CEO George Cheeks issued a statement: "We categorically deny any wrongdoing and remain committed to editorial independence." But leaks emerged that CBS had contacted the Biden campaign weeks before the Harris special. Text surfaced. One said, "Don't worry, the segment will frame her as the adult in the room." The board considered the unthinkable, pulling 60 Minutes off air until the trial was over. That had never happened in its 56-year history. The trial begins. Inside a packed Manhattan courthouse, the Trump legal team arrived with flags waving and cameras flashing. Reagan Lockwood, calm and unreadable, wore a white blouse and navy skirt classic, calculated. CBS arrived under a veil of protesters shouting, "Fake news," and "Defend the First Amendment." On day one, Lockwood opened with a line that stunned even her own team. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court, this case isn't about Donald Trump. It's about whether we let billion-dollar newsrooms rewrite reality in real time." Then she pressed play. The courtroom fell silent as the uncut Harris interview played on the overhead monitor. Her voice was measured, nuanced, even complimentary of Trump's foreign policy in parts. The contrast between the original footage and the broadcast edit was damning. Gasps filled the room. Judge Pritchard's face hardened. "Proceed," she said coldly. Kamala Harris responds. At a press conference held on the Capitol steps, Harris denied involvement in any media manipulation. "I answered the questions asked of me. I cannot speak to how the network chose to present them." But when asked whether she believed the edits were ethical, she hesitated. "Look," she said, "I didn't order those changes. If someone at CBS did, they'll have to answer for it." That soundbite aired worldwide and was cut up and looped just as her original interview had been. CBS staff in rebellion. Inside the newsroom, a quiet mutiny had begun. Over 24 CBS journalists signed a letter to the board demanding full transparency. An internal survey showed 48% of CBS employees believed management had compromised journalistic standards. And then it happened. Veteran anchor Norah O'Donnell went off-script during the evening news. "This network is more than ratings. It's supposed to be a public trust. If we edited something improperly, America deserves to know. All of it." She was suspended within 12 hours. Social media meltdown. #SignalFire trended for weeks. Trump supporters flooded platforms with calls to boycott CBS. Liberal commentators feared a chilling precedent if Trump's lawsuit succeeded. Media could become legally vulnerable to any negative coverage. But moderates, independents, and especially younger voters, disillusioned with both sides, rallied around the idea of truth. Memes appeared with Reagan Lockwood's face and the caption, "Make journalism scared again." A threat emerges. Late one night, Reagan Lockwood received a package with no return address. Inside was a single printed photo, her leaving the courthouse. Written in black marker across it were the words, "The last one who tried this ended up in a car crash. Watch the brakes." She called no one. She didn't report it. She simply pinned the photo to her office wall. Then she opened her laptop and began preparing Jenna Ryland for cross-examination. Southern District Court, New York City. Mid-October 2024. By the time Jenna Ryland took the stand, the courtroom was bursting with national anticipation. The hearing was being live-blogged by thousands, broadcast via audio-only stream to comply with federal restrictions, and every media outlet from the New York Times to Barstool Sports had reporters in the hallways. Trump's legal team didn't need her to be a hero. They just needed her to be believable. She turned out to be both. Jenna Ryland's testimony. Wearing a plain gray suit and minimal makeup, Jenna sat up straight as Reagan Lockwood approached the podium. "Ms. Ryland," Lockwood said, voice calm and measured, "can you explain to the court what happened the night before the Kamala Harris segment aired?" Jenna took a breath. "We had a late meeting. 11:40 p.m. Senior producer Carla Reynolds told me the optics were off, and that we needed to reframe the VP's answers to appear more aggressive toward Trump. She didn't say why. She just said, 'Do it fast.'" Lockwood nodded. "Did you ask if the White House had been in touch?" "She told me not to ask questions I didn't want answers to." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Jenna continued, detailing the final 5-hour sprint through CBS's editing room. She explained how the editing order came with specific timestamps, how they trimmed pauses, layered B-roll footage of Trump rallies over Harris's words, and even tweaked the audio mix to make her tone less uncertain. But the most shocking revelation came when Lockwood held up an enlarged screenshot of CBS's internal project tracker. "Ms. Ryland, what does this file name say?" Jenna looked at the screen. Final_Harris_60minute_signal_fire, v7_electionlock.mov. Is that a common file naming convention? No. That suffix, election lock, was added just that night. I've never seen it used before. Was that the final cut? Jenna hesitated. Yes. The version that aired. CBS legal strikes back. Cross-examination was brutal. CBS's lead counsel, Marcus Delaney, a battle-hardened defense litigator, pounced. "You were passed over for promotion, weren't you, Ms. Ryland?" "Yes." "You had friction with producer Reynolds?" "I had concerns." "That's not friction." "And yet, in your deposition, you stated you felt CBS had become a propaganda outlet. Isn't that your personal opinion, not a factual claim?" "It became my opinion after what I witnessed." Delaney turned to the jury. "So you're not just a whistleblower, you're a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind." But Ryland held her gaze steady. "If telling the truth is holding an axe, then yes, I'm grinding it." The courtroom erupted in murmurs again. Judge Pritchard had to bang her gavel twice. A surprise witness. Just when it seemed the media empire might weather the storm, Lockwood dropped a bombshell. "We called Jonas Karp to the stand." Gasps. Jonas Karp was CBS's lead digital archivist, a name previously not associated with the case. A heavy-set man in his 50s, Karp shuffled in quietly. His hair was disheveled, his jacket mismatched. But his testimony changed everything. "I was ordered to wipe Signifier." Lockwood raised an eyebrow. Ordered by whom? By Director of Digital Strategy, Evan Carver. He said the archive was potentially radioactive and needed to disappear before legal notices came in. And did you wipe it? No. I cloned it. I encrypted a copy and uploaded it to an offshore server. I didn't trust them. He looked to the jury. I've worked in television for 30 years. But this wasn't journalism. It was sabotage. The offshore archive. On the following morning, the Trump team submitted a sealed flash drive with full chain of custody verification. Inside were 12 versions of the Harris interview. Multiple Slack threads confirming intent to manipulate content for maximum psychological impact. Audio of a CBS executive saying, "We need to soften Harris's stumbles and frame Trump like Nixon, old, loud, and dangerous." The court issued a subpoena for all CBS internal communications from August to September 2024. It was a nuclear blast. The White House reacts. The Biden administration was forced to issue a statement. "We were not aware of any collaboration between our staff and CBS News regarding editorial decisions. If there was communication, it was informal and without endorsement from this office." But the damage was done. Leaks began to surface that Harris's press secretary had indeed met with CBS executives at a Manhattan restaurant days before the segment aired. The name of the restaurant? Signal, a hip fusion bistro that now became an ironic footnote to the scandal. Trump's public moment. At a Florida rally, Trump paced across the stage like a boxer in the final round. "They thought they could crush us with media lies. But the truth has teeth, folks. And it's biting back hard. They deleted files. They lied to the public. And now, they're going to pay." The crowd roared. Trump didn't even need to campaign anymore. He was running on vengeance, and it was working. Polls swung back hard in his favor. Independent voters, usually immune to both extremes, now saw Trump as the victim of elite manipulation. A wronged man, as one New York Times op-ed described him. CBS begins to collapse. Shareholders panicked. Paramount Global, CBS's parent company, issued a freeze on all political programming pending internal review. Bill Owens resigned in disgrace. Norah O'Donnell quit live on air, signing off with, "This is not what I signed up for. I believe in truth, and this wasn't it." 3 top producers were fired. Lawsuits began to stack. Advertisers pulled out. Ratings tanked. What started as a $20 billion lawsuit had become a full-blown corporate meltdown. Behind the curtain, in a locked chamber at CBS headquarters, a small group of remaining executives reviewed a final document. It was a risk report compiled by crisis PR firm Blackbridge and Hayes. It read, "Probability of court loss, 84%. Probability of corporate restructuring, 63%. Probability of federal criminal charges, 29%. Projected financial liability, $28.7 billion. A silence hung in the room. Someone finally spoke. "We need to offer Trump a settlement." Late October 2024. Undisclosed location, Palm Beach, Florida. The air was heavy with anticipation. Donald J. Trump sat behind a massive oak desk in his Mar-a-Lago study, a glass of Diet Coke sweating beside his phone. Across the table sat Reagan Lockwood, her hands clasped, unreadable as always. "You're telling me," Trump said slowly, "they want to settle?" Lockwood didn't flinch. "They're willing to go north of $10 billion. But they won't admit guilt publicly. No apology. No on-air correction. Just money." Trump's eyes narrowed. "I didn't start this for cash. I want their damn confession. I want a full retraction, and I want that segment re-aired with the original cut." Lockwood gave a tight nod. "They know. That's what scares them." The CBS proposal. CBS's executive committee had voted, narrowly, to pursue a confidential settlement. Their lawyers, crisis managers, and brand consultants had all agreed. If they went to a jury, they would lose. Spectacularly. But their offer was strategic. $12 billion payout, structured over 10 years. Gag order preventing Trump from discussing the case in public. No apology, no admission of wrongdoing. CBS would launch a new election integrity series hosted by neutral journalists as a face-saving gesture. Lockwood took the offer directly to Trump's inner circle: Bannon, Don Jr., Kimberly Guilfoyle, and Jason Miller. Opinions split instantly. Don Jr. slammed the desk. $12 billion is peanuts compared to what we could do with this politically. We squeeze them. We force them into the dirt. But Bannon raised a hand. Or, we take the money, fund 5 new networks, and dominate media for the next 50 years. Own the game. That's empire building. Trump sat back, fingers steepled. We don't play their game. We rewrite the rules. The media turns on itself. As rumors of a settlement swirled, other networks smelled blood. CNN and MSNBC ran exclusive retrospectives on CBS's decline, carefully distancing themselves from the scandal, while quietly deleting old editorials that praised the Harris interview. Inside CBS, morale collapsed. Anonymous employees began leaking everything. Internal memos, phone call transcripts, slush funds used to pay influencers for viral Harris edits. On Reddit, a whistleblower dropped a spreadsheet titled InfluenceNet, CBS Political Asset Distribution 2023-24. It showed payments to TikTok creators, micro-podcasters, even meme pages. CBS was no longer just battling Trump. It was facing a full-blown rebellion from the digital underground. Trump's counteroffer. 1 week after the settlement offer, CBS received a formal counterproposal. $20 billion full payout, no installments. A 60 minutes primetime broadcast, a live 1-hour Trump interview with zero editorial control. On-air reading of an official CBS apology. Immediate resignation of top 3 CBS executives. Trump and Lockwood retained full rights to publish a documentary about the trial. CBS boardroom erupted. Absolutely not, shouted EVP Meredith Lamb. This is insane. He's trying to dismantle the press. But even their legal team saw the writing on the wall. You don't have leverage anymore. He does. Back-channel diplomacy. Over the next 72 hours, emissaries from both sides met in anonymous hotels across D.C., Philadelphia, and Miami. Trump's team floated a compromise, reduced the cash to $15 billion, but the network must publicly admit to editorial misjudgment and allow Lockwood to deliver a 5-minute on-air closing statement. CBS suggested delaying the on-air segment until after the election. Trump refused. This is about the election. This is about now. The media frenzy grew louder. Public polls showed 61% of Americans believed CBS intentionally altered the Harris interview. Trust in mainstream journalism hit a historic low, lower than Congress, lower than used car salesmen. Leagate. Then came another twist. A CBS junior producer named Rachel Kane leaked a 27-minute uncut audio file of a CBS internal meeting titled Narrative Management Pre-Election. In it, senior staff discussed coordinating messaging with Democratic strategists and using AI-generated facial expression smoothing on Harris's reactions to optimize warmth and clarity. The internet exploded. #narrative management trended worldwide. The Department of Justice launched a preliminary inquiry into media collusion and campaign coordination. CBS's stock plunged 40% in 3 days. Paramount's ultimatum. CBS's parent company, Paramount Global, intervened. They dispatched Chairwoman Sherry Redstone to confront the executive team. In a private, brutal meeting, she laid down the law. We are hemorrhaging trust. If you do not resolve this within 48 hours, we will shutter CBS News entirely and rebrand it from scratch. Executives begged for mercy. But Redstone was finished with half measures. Fix this, or we burn it down. The Trump interview, greenlit. CBS folded. They signed the deal. $15 billion in cash. Public statement of editorial failure. And one final humiliation, a live, unedited Trump special airing at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 1, 2024, just 4 days before the election. Trump would have 1 hour. No scripts. No moderation. No commercial breaks. America would watch. Reagan Lockwood prepares the final blow. On the night before the broadcast, Reagan Lockwood sat alone in a Manhattan hotel suite, reviewing every document, every message, every file Jenna Ryland and Jonas Karp had handed her. She wasn't preparing to exonerate Trump. She was preparing to expose the machinery. The segment wouldn't just be a Trump victory lap. It would be a media reckoning. A final act of vengeance disguised as journalism. She closed her binder and whispered aloud. Let's bring the whole house down. November 1st, 2024, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. CBS National Broadcast, the unedited hour. More than 120 million people tuned in. It was the most anticipated live television event since the moon landing. Every bar, airport terminal, and living room in America was locked on CBS. Cable news went quiet. Twitter, Facebook, and Truth Social melted under the weight of activity. The stock market closed early, out of caution. There was no countdown, no music, no dramatic montage. The screen faded from black to a single, stark shot. Donald Trump, sitting alone in a chair. No desk, no podium, no interviewer. Just him. A single camera. Uncut. And for the next hour, he rewrote media history. Let me tell you what they did. Trump's tone was unlike anything before. Not bombastic. Not unhinged. Just methodical. They told you I was dangerous. That I was crazy. That I'd destroy America. But what they didn't tell you, he said, holding up a printed Slack message, was that they worked behind the scenes to make you believe that, whether it was true or not. He laid out the timeline. The edit requests. The meeting with Harris's press team. The late-night cuts labeled election lock. The wiped server. The whistleblowers. And then, with Reagan Lockwood stepping into frame, he turned over the microphone. Lockwood's 5 minutes. Reagan Lockwood walked on screen with no notes. No teleprompter. No makeup crew. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, this is not a legal victory. This is a funeral. The death of trust and the cause of its killer. She didn't praise Trump. She didn't condemn Harris. She condemned the illusion of choice, the algorithmic tailoring of perception, the technocratic overlords of news, as she called them, and reminded Americans that their worldview had been shaped not by reality, but by narrative curation designed for emotional manipulation. If the media can make Kamala Harris sound like Reagan, she said, they can make anyone sound like anything. Even you. Especially you. Her 5 minutes felt like 50. The aftershock. 11:37 p.m., November 1st, 2024. The country sat stunned. Not enraged. Not jubilant. Just quiet. Then the reactions came in waves. CBS stock fell another 17%. Netflix greenlit a 4-part docuseries titled Signal Fire, The Death of News. The White House issued a statement expressing deep concern over media coordination. The DOJ launched a full-scale investigation. Journalism schools across the country faced mass protest from students demanding curricular reform. The press was no longer untouchable. It was, for the first time in modern history, on trial in the court of public opinion. Kamala Harris withdraws. For days later, just one day before the election, Kamala Harris announced her withdrawal from the race. In a solemn address, she said, "The American people deserve a campaign free from the shadows of manipulation. I am stepping aside not in defeat, but in defiance, to say that I will not be part of a process tainted by deceit." The Democratic Party scrambled. Ballots had already been printed. Voters were confused. Lawsuits erupted over write-in candidates. Chaos ensued. Election Day, November 5, 2024. Donald J. Trump won 45 states. Turnout was the highest in American history. Exit polls showed something staggering. 37% of voters who identified as anti-Trump still voted for him, citing media corruption as their #1 concern. The victory was not political. It was cultural. Aftermath, the media reckoning. CBS was dismantled and folded into Paramount's streaming division. Reagan Lockwood published a book titled Narrative Control: How Media Became Government. It sold 7 million copies in the first month. Jenna Ryland now lectures at Columbia and heads a journalism ethics nonprofit. Jonas Karp bought a cabin in Montana and disappeared from public view. The phrase election lock was entered into the Oxford English Dictionary. Now, the manipulation of content to affect political outcomes. Congress passed the Truth in Media Act, establishing a public registry of editorial decision logs for all national broadcasters. The age of accountability had begun. Epilogue Mar-a-Lago, 2025. Trump stood on the terrace, overlooking the ocean, a cigar in hand. Reagan Lockwood joined him, a glass of bourbon in hers. "You didn't just win," she said. "You cracked the system open." Trump exhaled. "I didn't win." Lockwood glanced sideways. "What do you mean?" "I just told the story." America was ready to listen. They clinked glasses. Behind them, a muted television played CNN, now rebranded as Civic Network News, running a segment titled, Why Transparency is the Future of Journalism. For the first time in decades, Trump smiled without performing it.